Hello from a specially adapted room in a stunning location in Vught, a picturesque town in the province of Noord-Brabant in the south part of the Netherlands. We thought it an interesting contrast in these challenging times for all of us. Today we're resuming the Brabant Innovation Days discussion. In the past, these have been live meet and greet events in places like Japan, China, Israel and the US. Today, unfortunately, we can only have a few people in the room because of Corona. So the audience watching this live or later is somewhere out there on the internet. Hello. Now, in this hour, we're going to examine technology developments in personalized healthcare. Why are they important in the post-COVID world, and how can we speed up innovation? I'm delighted that 6 guests are able to join us today, 5 in person, all properly socially distanced, I should point out. So let's begin with our first guest, who is Managing Director of the Holst Center, a joint initiative between the Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research, TNO, and the Inter-University Microelectronics Center, better known as IMEC, with headquarters in Belgium. Roll the first video.
Most of the cost of healthcare is in hospitalization. That's the biggest burden. So if you can decrease the time people spend in the hospital, that helps a lot.
In our live discussion on the future of European personalised healthcare on April 22nd, we'll be looking at how the Holst Center in Eindhoven is building on its knowledge of flexible electronics. They've launched the Health Patch platform.
It's a platform technology where we showcase that different types of sensors for measuring ECG, breathing rate, pulse oximeter, in the future core body temperature and blood pressure can be measured. But each use case requires a different patch, so to say. Because there are use cases where the patch only has to be worn 1 or 2 days. And then, for example, you can use standard electrodes. But if you need to use a patch for 7 or even 14 days, you need a different set of electrodes. So it's a platform.
For many chronic diseases, you need to take regular blood samples or perform internal ultrasound. The patch allows non-invasive monitoring on the racetrack, at home, in the clinic or hospital.
The first use case of this patch has been actually commercialized now by Philips, one of our partners. We are partnering actually with several, mostly academic hospitals, like Erasmus and Academic Hospital in Amsterdam. For example, to validate how useful the patch is for monitoring people who have COPD.
If you're watching this stream either live or later and have a question about what you're seeing, send an email now to questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. We're happy to connect you. Don, thanks very much for joining us live today. How important is innovation like the Health Patch platform going to be for Europe's recovery in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, Jonathan. So we think that COVID has definitely accelerated the need for things like a health patch. I think everybody recognizes the need in a COVID situation to follow how your lungs are behaving, and in that way get an early warning if something is happening, and like a COVID. Another one, what you also see happening, is that with COVID, people become more and more aware for what they call value-based healthcare. Like I said in the intro video, the cost is mostly determined by the hours you spend in a hospital. As you can recover at home, while still a doctor in the hospital can monitor your condition, that helps a lot.
Now, but on the other hand, I've got a smartphone. Can't I use a smartphone instead, or?
You can use a smartphone, and definitely that will happen, and you can follow what is measured, but you need a physician to make a decision what the best therapy for you is. So he has to access that data.
What role does the government play, because you're a government research lab, in medical developments, and also your relationship with industry?
So at Holst we have a model actually where we work on disruptive innovations, where there are needs in innovation in materials, in new equipment, in new production processes, new types of devices, new applications. And if you work on these disruptive innovations, you need actually to involve the whole industrial value chain. So at Holst, with the help of the government, we have a model where we work with 5 or 6 companies together in developing, for example, the health patch, where different material companies are developing, in the case of the health patch, the electrodes or the materials contacting the body, people who supply the chip, who supply the sensor, and then people who in the end want to produce it and put it in the market.
So when do you step out?
We step out typically after the first prototypes have been delivered, or in the case of the health patch, after it's clinically validated and can go to a productization.
And are you actively looking for partners in Europe?
We're always looking for partners, as this is a really large challenge, and we heavily believe in putting together resources to accelerate these developments and jointly develop these in partnerships.
So finally, what's your preferred future for healthcare, let's say by 2026? How do you hope it develops?
So in the end, what we envision is a healthcare system where maybe take an analogy from equipment industry, where you go to preventive maintenance, and that you don't get sick, that you don't have to be hospitalized. And the way we envision that is also, again, what's also happening in the world of industry, that you kind of develop a digital twin of a person, and that by measuring different biomarkers with something like, for example, this health patch, okay, the system knows how your body is and can take preventive actions before you get sick or before you get, for example, a heart or a disease.
Thanks, Tom, for now. If you're interested in getting in touch with Tom, then send a reaction to questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. and we'll pass your message on. Time for our next guest, who is Science Director of the Life Science Institute ICMS. They research into the molecular complexity of living systems, developing biology into technical science. Let's watch their video.
Why do molecular systems work the way they do? To find out, Eindhoven University of Technology has established the Institute for Complex Molecular Systems. Let's enter the world of regenerative medicine, where next-generation smart materials are already making an impact.
So a molecule by itself doesn't have any function. It gets this function via interactions with other molecules. So I think we started more or less from the molecular sciences approach, or the chemistry approach, but over the years we have really integrated elements from life sciences, from bioengineering, but also from physics, mechanical engineering, and also mathematics. Of course, molecules are pretty central in what we do, but you can approach them from different angles, and that leads to new and sometimes also breakthrough insights in what molecules are and how they interact.
ICMS has always had an open mind for applications. For the last 20 years, teams in Eindhoven have been studying ways to replace a non-functioning heart valve with a synthetic one. The problem in young patients is that the child grows, but the synthetic cells do not, meaning a constant cycle of risky repeat operations. The solution is to put something into the body that allows the patient to grow a replacement heart valve themselves. You need a kind of scaffolding material.
And the scaffolding material that has been used successfully for this approach started off with a fundamental study about supramolecular materials that are dynamic. They are not bound via strong covalent bonds, but non-covalent bonds. They interact, and because of the dynamics, they can really change and kind of adapt to changing environments. And that's exactly what you need in the body. And based on that fundamental knowledge, people from the engineering side were able to develop this into not just molecules interacting, but really into material, fibrous material, that then was kind of processed into a matrix material on which cells could grow and become a real heart valve. You know, you really have to have a full understanding how that structure works within the person in an in vivo situation, how you can make it in such a way that there's also no toxic effects, and that it really has the right properties to allow the cells to adhere and to grow into the desired heart valve tissue.
And now it's time for this technology to leave the lab.
Yeah, well, this is now commercialized. There's a company called Xaltis who's taking this technology really further and implementing this into the clinic. They already have done patient studies with these, successful patient studies. And now it's the next step in the further implementation of this technology to make it really accessible to a large audience. And at the same time, I think we are looking forward to the next challenge in this field of what we call regenerative medicine, which is not only to grow this kind of, you could say, this valve system, this muscle tissue, but to see if you can also create other types of functional tissues, and then you have to think about regrowing organs. So it's a parallel development of say, the molecular sciences in creating molecules and more the theoretical sciences in designing and understanding what molecules are and how they interact. But of course, we are far away from really understanding, for example, how a living cell operates. It's, I think, the holy grail of our institute and of many other institutes to really find out how all these different molecules within the cell collaborate with each other, interact with each other, communicate with themselves, but also with the outside world, to make something that is really living. And that's a process that will intrigue, I think, our type of scientists for many years and decades to come.
If you're watching this stream either live or later and have a question about what you're seeing, send an email now to questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. We're happy to connect you.
So, if the technology is working, we hope to have Jan van Hest actually on the line now. He's actually calling in from Eindhoven. Jan, your comment at the end of that video was very, very interesting. How soon before we're able to grow a replacement organ, and which is the easiest organ to grow?
That's a very good question, and it's in fact a challenge for this field of science already for decades, to be honest. And the most important and intriguing problem we see is that an organ like the kidney has a very intricate internal structure. And if you want to place the right cells in the right place in the tissue, you need to really also recreate that matrix structure. So I think it really needs an engineering approach combined with fundamental understanding of cell biology to push this further. And I think most research now is really directed to making these kidney structures. I think that's also one of the main, say, the holy grail really in this field of science.
Now, some of your other work involves making solar panels on spacecraft like the Mars lander able to clean themselves. In other words, get rid of the dust that accumulates. Can you use similar sort of techniques to make surfaces that clean themselves, perhaps in an operating theatre where there's a risk of superbugs like MRSA or COVID variants?
Yeah, indeed. It seems like these fields are very far apart from each other, but in fact they're pretty close to each other because they all are based on making well-defined materials by knowing how molecules interact. And indeed, if you have a self-cleaning surface, then of course you can also use this for catheters or other kind of medical devices that can also be cleaned. And the nice thing what we are now looking into is that we can, clean these surfaces on demand. So we can switch the properties of the surface, so making them adherent or non-adherent whenever we like. And that really leads to, indeed, for example, the removal of dust particles from a solar panel. But you can also think about, releasing things that have been absorbed to a surface and then clean it up in one go. So this technology is indeed really broadly applicable.
So what kind of European companies would you like to partner with? You said a bit about what you could offer them, but what can they offer you?
Well, I think what we're always looking into is to see how we can really further kind of commercialize technology, how we can scale it up. So we're interested in many different companies that have a background in material science or in device development. And with these companies, I think we really can make also a next step to not only show things on the lab scale, but really to push this technology further into commercial activity.
Thanks to Jan van Hest. And if you have further questions for Jan, then email questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. You're getting used to the address. Right, now time to talk to guest number 3. He's actually in the room. He's research manager for TNO's 3D department of Food and Pharma. Let's look at the video.
Some people think 3D printing is just for fun, jewellery, or maybe fancy pasta. But suppose you could print nutrient supplements to give athletes, defence forces, or astronauts exactly what they need at exactly the right time. TNO Food and Pharma is already conducting trials with those who need to perform to their best.
Yeah, that's the category that we call high performers. So it's indeed for getting that ultimate last % out of your performance. We're looking at two distinct cases. One is on personalized nutrition. There's a lot of data available as a person. Your metabolism works differently, that your nutritional need during the day is different than mine, and actually mine of today is going to be different than tomorrow. One of the ideas is that if you know, okay, this is lacking, then we can print a food component or a snack which complements your daily intake. But also on the other side of the scale, you also have people that are going in the hospital that need to recover. They need additional proteins and another diet to recover from a surgery or be in ideal fitness so that they can undergo the surgery and the recovery afterwards is quicker. Really going to personalize, you need to be able to vary a lot of components, so that's a step that we're making now.
And suppose you could print medicines to administer the right mix of drugs, fine-tuned to the body weight of each patient. Again, TNO is well advanced.
One option that we see is on personalized medicine. If you look at, we're never going to print paracetamol. People take it, it's produced by millions, and the exact dosage is not that important. But if you look at patient groups where the medication has a severe impact on the body, you want the dosage to be as accurately as possible. If you need 235 milligrams of active component, that we can print a pill with exactly that, instead of you getting a pill of 500 milligrams, because the only ones they have is 100 and 500.
If you're watching this stream either live or later and have a question about what you're seeing, send an email now to questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. We're happy to connect you.
Okay, from the video to live in the studio, Peter de Brouwer. Now I'm curious about whether you see a world where your 3D nutrient printers, as you call them, would link up with the Holst health patch platform. In other words, you get exactly what you need when you need it. Is that possible?
Yeah, well, as you said, where you get exactly what you need when you need it, then you need to know what you need at what time, and therefore you need data. And sensors like the wearables and the health patches of Holst are a very good example of that. If you have that data personally available, then you can make, based on your needs and your body, your personal prescription. And that is needed to be able to go to this next step of then also making that personal ingredient nutritional snack.
Okay, let's switch to pharma. You talked about being able to print exactly the right dose of medicine as well. Does that help patients go home earlier?
Well, in general, it helps patients because you get the medication and it has an effect on your body. The desirable effect is that it cures your disease or illness that you have, but it also has side effects. So you don't want to take more than you need. So being able to optimally make the dosage specifically for you will help you in recovering from the illness and having as least side effects as possible, so making the optimal treatment for yourself.
And can this process speed up the time it takes to develop new medicines?
Yeah, so in the development of medicine takes a long time, and typically it takes 12 years to develop a new medicine from the point that the active component was thought of or invented. And it requires a lot of steps of testing, trials, going from small tests in a lab to first clinical trials with patients. And all these different steps require different amounts of pills to be available. And having a flexible technology that can provide you with all sizes and ranges of medication and being able to vary the dosages helps in creating those pills quicker. So the lead time running up to all those trials can be shorter. And over that 12-year period, that can lead to significant time reductions and therefore cost reductions.
So do you see a day when prescriptions are actually printed at the pharmacy Right, rather than just go and collect generic medicines.
I don't expect everything to be personalized. We will, as I said in the movie, paracetamol we will still be getting in general produced pills, but specific medication with heavy side effects or with small patient groups, I foresee definitely opportunities having that printed in a pharmacy to get what you need at the time you need it.
I can imagine that would really help children.
Well, especially at the moment, the dosage is mainly based on weight, and the weight variation in adults also varies, but especially with children, it can vary from 1 or 2 kilos to 30 or 40 kilos. So the factor of difference there is enormous. So there's never the right dosage for the child available. So by being able to use 3D printing, you can print the dosage that is required.
Where does your role at TNO start and where does it stop?
We look at how digital technologies like 3D printing can provide solutions, and then look at what is available. Currently, there are 3D printers out there, and we look at what the gap is. What is limiting the adaptation of these technologies for these cases, and then we try to develop the technology to make it suitable. We do a proof of principle, proof of concept, up to a prototype, and then it's up to the companies to make it into a commercial product.
And are you looking for specific European companies to help you?
We're looking for everybody that is enthusiastic about this concept and wants to improve these medications, going from hospitals, pharmacies to pharma companies, being small or large. As Ton van Mol said on Holst, we're looking at the whole value chain.
Our next guest is also a 3D printer, but in this case, the Brightlands Material Centre works with special polymers. Let's have a look.
The Brightlands Material Centre in Geleen, in the southern Netherlands, is well known for its innovative 3D printing for use in bikes, cars and planes. But what role can they play in personalised healthcare? Let's find out.
Hello, Richard.
Hi, Jonathan.
So what's unique about your 3D printing process and what have you got there?
I brought some examples of what we do. 3D printing is a process that exists for many, many years already, so I think everybody has heard of it. But the new technology that we're developing is we're printing with a continuous fiber. And that creates the possibility to add strength to the 3D printed parts, but still keep them lightweight, because we do that with polymers. So one of the big advantages of 3D printing is that you can personalize or customize. So and one object that needs customization and personalization all the time is, of course, the human body. So what we're looking at is braces or body support structures, like exoskeletons, where you try to help the body to carry large weights. And it's very easy for with the 3D printer to print those structures around the body, make them small, make them lightweight, make them strong because of the fibers. So applications for biomedical markets that we're looking at are typically braces and braces to correct the structure in your body.
And presumably that's going to be pretty useful for children because they're growing too quickly.
Exactly. So there are children relatively young that have a certain deformation in their skeleton, and you want to correct that, but you have to keep correcting that until they reach the 18th or when they are an adult, and that means you have to modify that brace over and over again. And up today, that is just done by looking at and seeing if maybe the braces become too small, and then you modify. But with the modern technologies, you can scan, you can look at a body, and you print the new brace exactly fitting to the body at the moment that you need it.
So where does your role at TNO Brightlands stop, and where does industry take over?
That's a good question. And basically, it's quite similar to what Ton said and what Peter said. So typically, we pick up new ideas, new technologies like these, and then we try to show that it works. We try to develop it, and we try to show the proof of concept or the demonstrator. And then we're always welcoming new interested companies to pick this up. And we're happy to hand it over in a joint collaboration and then help them to make it a commercialization.
Any particular sector in the healthcare that you're looking at?
Yeah, so we're particularly looking at, as I said, orthopedics, exoskeletons. It's not really biomedical, but braces, those kind of things, yes.
And can these devices that you're building, can you build in sensors?
Yes. So something very particular that we found is that at this a part like this, we printed with continuous carbon fibers inside. And carbon fiber has a particular property. It changes its electrical resistance when you deform it. That means that when you have printed a part and you start using it, and you're wearing it, and it's deforming, actually you can measure that change in signal. And as such, that forms a sensor. So it's not a sensor; it's a sensor in itself, the carbon fiber. So basically, you have you can print all kind of parts and have basically an Internet of Things type of application with whatever you make. So that's something it's really new what we are exploring and trying to use in those medical braces as well.
Good, you heard it here first. Thanks, Richard. And if you're watching this stream and think you have a great idea or a project, please get in touch. Contact us at questions@BrabantInnovationDays.com. We'll get back to you. Now, I'm delighted to welcome Katja Panke, who's the Managing Director of the Eindhoven Engine. Welcome, Katja. They're building on strong innovation in this region of the Netherlands called Brainport, and I think they call it Brainport for a reason. Let's look at the video.
Artificial intelligence can help us restore old footage of the Netherlands, adding colour to understand the forgotten culture of the industrial age. An era when Philips made just about everything in and around the city of Eindhoven. All dreamed up in the Philips Nat Lab, the world's largest industrial research lab of its kind. It's time to recreate that culture of shared innovation.
Yeah, so Philips Research was a very open-door-minded research facility in a time frame where Philips was still big, 340,000 people worldwide. And all those technology areas were all around under one roof. It was all Philips. Philips, in fact, did work on all those areas. But nowadays, it has been separated. ASML is separate from Thermo Fisher, is separate from Philips Healthcare. And in order to bridge those gaps and really explore the synergies, to explore the collective intelligence, that's why we founded the Eindhoven Engine.
This moment in Eindhoven Engine, we have about 15 projects, about 200 people who are involved from the industry and the academic world. Companies are coming to Eindhoven Engine for the reason looking for talent, of course, but also have access to a different way of working, to work in a own culture which is not the company culture, and where you have access to Knowledge Institute, but also young students.
The interesting thing is about our region is that we work very well together, all parties. The triple helix, as it was called in the past, maybe it's a pentagon in the future or now. Still, there are silos, like healthcare is sort of separated from semicon, is separated from energy. And within Eindhoven Engine, we try to build bridges so as to accelerate each of those areas in their own by exploring cross-linking of knowledge and insights and system thinking.
I agree that it's difficult to copy the way of working and the people, but I think it's easy to find a formula which is fitting to your specific ecosystem and find the energizers in this ecosystem, the good people who are connected very well to that ecosystem.
If you want to bridge gaps between, say, the building environment and the healthcare and the semicon, you cannot let it be only in those companies because they are in their own areas. So you have to get the people from the companies to our campus, to our location of Eindhoven Engine, together with the researchers from TU Eindhoven, Fontis and TNO, to actually co-locate the innovation projects there, and in order to unleash that collective intelligence.
In Eindhoven Engine, we ask people to be part of our physical co-location idea. So at least part-time people need to join us, and we are convinced that that is the added value of our way of working. 1-2 days a week that people have the wish also to contribute to this community.
Now, Katja, you explained in the video there how Eindhoven Engine collaborates in a different way. I think it's important to create a neutral, trusted space so people can think outside the box, and also stimulate this cross-disciplinary thinking, because otherwise people think in silos. Perhaps you can give me an example, though, of one of the medical-related projects that you have started.
Yes, I would like to do so. So we have a project, it's a perinatal life support device. We call it Juno Perinatal Healthcare. You can see it as a kind of incubator 2.0, an alternative for this incubator where preterm born babies can come in. The problem with this very preterm born babies are that the vital organs are not good developed when they come into an incubator, and they are in the air, so the artificial womb is in a liquid base. The babies will have a kind of, the cord to the placenta. It's an artificial placenta, of course. And you can help develop the vital organs much more better. And that will reduce costs for healthcare and damage later on in life enormously.
But I'm rather surprised that people haven't thought of this before.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's, of course, a very critical thing to discuss, but also a lot of fundamental research is needed, but also to build a bridge to the applied research and especially also to the medical hospitals. So it's very about combining forces from fundamental research and applied research. Yes, absolutely.
And how far have you got so far?
There are studies with lambs, so they work quite successfully, but you talk about babies from 24 to 28 weeks, and 50% of them will die anyhow, and 1/3 will suffer long life from really severe health problems. And so you have a lot of costs which you need to investigate. I think in America, it's about 20 billion euros for extra healthcare costs for these preterm babies. So it's a huge potential, yeah.
And who's involved in the project? Because you mentioned the name, but what's the mix?
So we are very happy that this is already a very international consortium. We have the University of Eindhoven, but also universities from Italy and the RWTH Aachen. They are cooperating also with the Maxima Medicentrum in Eindhoven in the region for the clinical studies and clinical trials. So it's an international consortium of fundamental research and also the hospitals in the region.
And when do you judge a project to be a success?
A success for us as Eindhoven Engine when we have a contribution and acceleration in their innovation, when we can help them bring this product faster to the market, the valorization part. Also, when we can use our co-location to co-create as much as possible. What you also mentioned and have seen in the video is to elaborate all these cross-domain research, have access to young talents, but also very experienced guys from the industry. So to mix these cultures, but the final success is when you can get out a business case, money out of that, and when you can really reduce the healthcare costs and better the life and the development of these preterm babes.
So what's your preferred future for the engine as a whole? Let's say it's 2026, and it's been successful. How did you get there?
Yeah, we have a very close connection to our very nice ecosystem in Brabant. You have also mentioned that. So it's a very intensive collaboration between the knowledge institutes, TNO, Fontes for Applied Studies, and the University of Eindhoven. So to bring all these partners together, and our future is that we contribute a lot to the innovation power of the region, but also be a role model for the future for other regions which have their typical fingerprint of their own region. And also be a kind of thought leader in innovation acceleration and business model innovation.
But how has COVID affected you?
Yeah, co-location, of course, it's very difficult to have. It also forced us very fast to rethink and come back from all these typical unexpected meetings, but you can organize virtually a lot. And you see, on the other hand, when you have fundamental and applied research, a lot of people can do their research and in-depth work very well, and you have a lot of possibilities to connect anyhow.
Okay, well, success with your work and the other 14 projects as well.
Yes.
And then presumably more to come because you've got an open call?
Yes, we opened the call, or we closed just a notification deadline. We got 33 notifications for consortia who are looking for applying for a project in May. And we are very happy with that.
But it's important to point out that these are companies that you're helping to accelerate. This is not a startup accelerator.
No, it's not an accelerator or an incubator for startups. We're more focusing on scale-ups and especially to bridge the gap between the companies and the knowledge institutes.
And how long do the projects last?
Normally between 3 or 4 years. Yes.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, let's welcome our last guest in this particular session. He works here.
This is the headquarters of Amgen Netherlands, part of a California-based company with 24,000 staff around the world, a leader in biotechnology. So what are they doing in Europe for the future of healthcare?
So, welcome to Joep Ranierissen, who's medical director at Amgen, the Netherlands. And you've brought a slide with you.
Yes.
Let's have a look at that. So is this the future?
Well, I hope not. I think there's an urgent need to change this picture, because what I see here is a very demanding need for care. So people are getting older, are needing more care, are more chronic diseases, and so there's a lot of pressure on the healthcare system. On the other hand, a lot of people, like we heard before, are working for solutions. But those solutions will, of course, also cost money. So you see that there's an enormous increase on the budget requirements for healthcare. And that's creating a problem. There's a tension there. And then add to that the issue of the labor market, where the need for nurses and doctors is increasing, where there's not so much people around there to deliver that care. So there's a need for change. And that's also what we discovered a few years ago. We worked on that in Amgen, and we changed our vision, because we want to move away from selling medicines and move towards a being paid for outcome model. And like one of my previous speakers said before, I think that is value-based healthcare, and that's the way forward, where also we want to be paid for giving better outcomes for patients.
One point in the slide, it says there's a figure of 50% of the world living with chronic diseases. That looks pretty alarming. And is it rising?
Yeah, it's definitely rising. And I think that more and more diseases are becoming chronic because of our innovations. Like, for instance, an example is cancer. I think that when you used to get the diagnosis of cancer, you knew you were dying in a certain period of time, and you were not having that long a period to live anymore. And now you see with the new treatments coming up, and the new treatments even being developed as we speak, that period of living with cancer is becoming longer. And so that will create additional problems for the whole system, set apart from what it creates for the patients. I mean, they need to be taken care of in a proper way, but they also want to avoid, as much as possible, going to the hospital too many times. So I think that there also we need to find solutions where the patients are taken care of at home much more. And then devices like we have seen before, they can help in that aspect.
Now, of course, many of these devices we've spoken about today are going to generate an enormous amount of medical data, which needs to be analysed, maybe also anonymised. I see you're involved in the discussion in the Netherlands about patient data.
Yes.
How far are we in the Netherlands with patient data?
I can say maybe in the Middle Ages.
Really?
I think we really have a big step to go. I think where we are right now, if you look at what we are discussing right now, is how can we even combine data within our healthcare system? It's impossible. And COVID helped us to make that visible to everybody. I mean, if you want to do analysis on the whole population of the Netherlands, it's impossible. You don't get the data out of the systems. So we have protected our systems and our hospital system in such a way That's good, and it's privacy, and it's all kind of arguments why that was done. But it would be much better if those data would be available in a broader sense and can be combined, can be linked, and can be investigated much better than they are right now.
So how quickly can we change? How quickly can we change?
Well, I think it's encouraging to see that now more and more people are crying for better data and better data infrastructure, better sharing of data, reusing of data. So there is a bigger call for action right now. And you see, for instance, one of the companies who won the Growth Fund, 69 million, is HealthRI, is Health Research Institute. And that's exactly a company or a foundation which is looking at how can we make all these data available for research purposes.
Everybody wants to live a long and healthy life. Nevertheless, each of us will get sick sometime. When that happens, we want the best possible treatment. But what is best for one person may cause problems for another. The disease course and treatment response differ for each of us. This is partly due to our biological differences, for example, our genetic characteristics. If we could predict disease course and treatment response based on biological factors, we could offer each of us a tailored treatment. To improve collaboration and data sharing, a new generation research infrastructure is required. Therefore, several Dutch research organisations have jointly developed the Health RI initiative. Health RI stands for Health Research Infrastructure. It offers a clear vision and roadmap to establish a single interconnected national infrastructure for personalised medicine and health research. An active role for us as citizens is an essential starting point. This requires secure and user-friendly technology which we can use to personally participate in research while being assured that our privacy is protected. Health RI already is an important goal for many organisations in the Netherlands. To be truly successful, we need to invest and join forces now. From industry to government, and from citizen to academy. This is the only way to realise sustainable and affordable personalised medicine and health. The initiative aims to provide health benefits for everyone, impetus to Dutch science and innovation, and an active Dutch involvement in European initiatives.
And I think the next step then will be let's first fix the thing within the healthcare system and then open up to other companies and other devices so that can be added into the whole system so we can have a total picture.
And maybe other institutes too, because again, there's a point of keeping the data safe.
Yes.
I know that in both in Delft and in Eindhoven, there are groups working on quantum key distribution.
Yes.
So that you can keep the data safe, not only now, but in the future when technology gets much more advanced. But are there European countries that you look to as getting it right, having a model that we could follow?
Yeah, I think that in this aspect, the Scandinavian countries are doing a great job. And I'm specifically very much intrigued by what Estonia is doing. They skipped basically the phase of having individual separate systems. They moved from a paper system to a cloud-based system, where they also took care of the privacy by having all the data in the care system prevented by a digital fingerprint, like our DGD in a way, so that everybody can look at their own data whenever they want, and every doctor can look at the patient data, even from people around here. If you would be living in Estonia, they could look at your data, but, and that's the big difference, and that's a mind shift in thinking, they look at the data, but you will get as a patient immediately a message that this doctor is looking at your data. So the privacy is arranged in a completely different way, and I like that, because that gives much more transparency, much more protection of privacy than we have currently, because currently what happens if you move from one hospital to the other, you get a CD-ROM, or you get even sometimes even the fax is being used to produce, or a letter. I mean, can you imagine that all this data is being transferred in this old-fashioned way, where we have very secure systems around, technology solutions around, which can help us in improving that. And that's what we should look at.
And many of those ideas are coming from startups and scale-up companies based in the Netherlands, coming up with brilliant ideas. Are you working with them?
I have a full list of companies where I'm in touch with, because we need to find these solutions, and we're looking at it from an Amgen perspective, because if you want to move to an outcome-based system, you need the data. Without data, you don't have an outcome-based system. So you need to have availability to the data, but also solutions how to capture these data. And there's a lot of startup companies around who can help us in that, and that's why we are working together with them.
I know a lot of startup companies have problems scaling because they've got all sorts of bridges to cross, including clinical trials and things like that. In fact, we got a short video from Fokko Wieringa, because he's got some suggestions about what people should think about when they're scaling their company.
Well, I could recommend, from experience at least, 3 things. And that is, involve patients and patient organizations from as early as possible on, and keep involving them in the process while you are designing your product. Then, secondly, if you have a truly disruptive technology, then realize it's not included in standardizations and regulations. So take part in the committees that write those standards and regulations, and in that way, create an opening towards the market. And the third one, and that is often forgotten, but it's really true, it's the second valley of death. Namely, you have to get reimbursement for your product. It has to be paid by the healthcare insurance companies. And if you start interacting with them from an early stage on, explaining why they can save a lot of money with this while serving the patients better, then you have a real strong combination. And in fact, this is what we've done with the Dutch Kidney Foundation for the portable artificial kidney. We've done all these 3 things, and we even have co-funding from the 3 main healthcare insurance companies in the Netherlands. They've co-invested 8 million euros for this product to make it. And that is a sign of truly solving a need for society, solving a need for all of us.
Do you hear something there?
No, absolutely. I mean, I fully recognize this picture. I think, first of all, the patient. I mean, the patient is crucial. And what we try to do also within Amgen is, when you move to an outcome-based system, you want to have the outcomes which are relevant for patients, and not the outcomes which are relevant for doctors. So you need to really get together with the patient, but also the doctor and the nurses and everybody involved there to develop an outcome set which we all agree upon. This is important for the patient. This is what they want. And then you should start working on that one. Then, of course, you get to the topic of standards. In order to collect the data in a structured way, you need to develop standards, and you need to have a way to report those data in a standardized way. That will help analyzing the data in the future. And that's something where some of the professionals are working on quite hard, and they are really far advanced already. But there are also groups of doctors who are not working on that, and they need to be stimulated to do the same thing, to make this all available and more transparent, and get to a way to improve the outcomes for patients.
Now, the vaccine companies were able to get government approval in record time, yet other drugs and medical devices often take 10 years from idea to being used in hospitals and maybe in the home. What are you doing to innovate with new companies and to speed everything up?
Yeah, I think that discussion is already ongoing for a longer time. We want to speed up the accessibility of our drugs to patients. So we want to speed up the process to get access to the patient, to get the medication to the patient. And ways to do that is to look at what is holding us back. What are the procedures which are holding us back? And related to COVID, we were in that sense, we were a bit lucky that we got the COVID crisis in the middle of a discussion we were having with our government about approval to use medication in the public from an environmental perspective. There used to be a procedure, whenever you have a genetically modified product, then that used to go to an environmental committee, and that could take 9 months to 1.5 years. So even before starting a phase 1 trial, you already lost a year to 1.5 years. We brought that back in the discussion to 90 days, and then COVID hit us. And then the COVID companies and the government said, yeah, but we cannot wait 90 days for an approval, because that's the same, it's the same product. It's also a genetically modified product. So we cannot wait those 90 days. So it needs to be quicker. And we said, yes, of course, that's what we said as well. Make it even quicker. And it can be done, and it's now proven because they gave an approval within 20 or 30 days. So that's the way we need to look at all of these hurdles which hold us back and which give delays in access for patients.
Yeah, and using the right technology at the right time and making sure.
I think that also we could take some more risk and say, okay, let's give an earlier access and give a sort of temporary access, temporary market authorization with an additional demand for proof, additional trials or real-world data. If we have this infrastructure and we can follow the product in real life in the Dutch environment, I mean, you cannot imagine how much value can come out of that one. And that will give earlier access, close follow-up, close monitoring of how the patients are doing. And then that will then decide, okay, shall we improve it? Or maybe for a smaller group of patients? Or where does it bring the most benefit? And that's of great value, I think, for the whole society.
And does Amgen work with other European countries, or is it mainly just Dutch-based?
No, I think that it is getting momentum across the world, but I think we are a front runner in this field. Also, the Dutch government, to complement them, they are really looking at creating more transparency of data to go to an outcome-based healthcare system. But we need to accelerate. I think it's going too slow, and we need to accelerate.
Good. So. People are watching this video stream. I'm sure they'll be interested in getting in touch if they have ideas. Any specific countries you're looking at, or doesn't it really matter?
There's something new I heard actually, which was just recently popped up. There was a Karolinska Institute in Stockholm where they got rid of the hospital system and moved to an open system, which is much more accessible to share data and to give patients the data they need for their own purposes.
And Fonka was mentioning working with the patient groups as well, because they tend to know a heck of a lot about a particular disease.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think we need to involve them and also involve them in what they need to get an improvement. I mean, the example what I put up here is how good would it be? I have here with me the phone with the NS app. I mean, we used to think about the NS as an old-fashioned company, but
this is the railway company.
They can show you how much delays there is, where is the busy part of the train, or everything in your hands. This technology can help healthcare as well. How good would it be that you have a health app where everything is combined together? It's still a long way to go, but I'm dreaming of, instead of having 50, 60 apps around where you need to go from one app to the other, having one central place where you collect all your data from the healthcare system, from devices, from wherever you want, to combine them and then come back to advice and maybe produce the pills at home or at the pharmacy so that you get what you need at that time. And we need to move away from what we have now, a break and fix system. So you need to be broken before we fix you, to predict and prevent. So we need to be much earlier on in the chain and prevent people from getting sick. And their data and technology will be of great help.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Some questions that come in. One for Ton, actually. It says, what sensors are integrated into the patch, and can you simply put those sensors one day into the phone?
All right, so start with the first question. So if you take this patch, which we also use in clinical trials, this can measure your ECG, your breathing rate, breathing depth, your activity. In the next version, which is coming up, will also include SpO2 and core body temperature. Then the question, can you measure, and we get this very often with a phone or a watch. A watch is a little bit more realistic. If you take the modern watches, you can do that. we say it's indicative. To really have a good measurement, you need a very good contact with the skin. This is just where we are at this moment, and that's why we also call it a patch. Your watch doesn't have that all the time, so it's not reliable. So at that case, it's indicative. But if you want to trust it, a patch is what we foresee necessary. Can it done with the phone in like this Star Trek kind of gadgets? Maybe.
Peter, maybe you can answer this question. How do you determine the right dose of medicines? Is it by trial and error, or is it by using some prior knowledge about groups of patients?
So that's indeed, it's of course dependent on the specific case. But you need to build up data to know which indicators predict what is needed. So that's up to the physicists, the doctors, to build up the knowledge data, because now the medication is based on weight and whether you're male or female in most cases. But if you find other indicators, how your stress level corresponds to what you need or your metabolism, but for that, yeah, we need time and build-up of data. And if we have that correlation, then we can print it.
Thank you. Question also for you. What about home-based smart IoT sensors that are able to adapt to specific patients using data-driven machine learning and prior knowledge about each patient's, in other words, the use of AI?
Yeah, I think that the use of AI can be very helpful, but one of the prerequisites for AI is loads of data. And if you see how our healthcare system is structured, like I said before, it's too scattered and it's too little data to have AI. Of course, there are spots where you can use AI, like in the ICU, for instance, where you collect a lot of data. The patch of yourself can use a lot of data. So there are certain areas in laboratory, in PA labs, and so there are certain areas where you can use AI to predict, and so we should do that. But in general, or for most of the diseases, it's still a bridge too far.
Brilliant. Well, that's where we have to leave it, because that's all the time we have for in this session on healthcare. We're back actually at 3 o'clock for an hour's discussion on the energy transition and the role that renewable energy generation and storage is going to play. Thanks to all the guests, either here in the room, and we've had a lot of fun this afternoon, and also, of course, all the people at home, maybe at work as well, watching online. We can't hope to be comprehensive in an hour, but we can start a conversation. So, once again, drop us an email, send us suggestions, because there's more to come from the Brabant Innovation Days, especially when we're allowed to travel. Thank you, and goodbye for now.